Hello and welcome to the Skillwork Forum, where I'm joined with my partner Brett here for Skillwork, and we gather each week for these podcasts to talk about the things hopefully that interest you, and primarily the challenges that have to do with the skilled worker shortage in America, and something we're really passionate about. And today we're going to kick off a 6-part series that really all revolves around the pain points associated with the cost of not changing. So all of us are familiar with doing something, a process we have in place, a routine that we have, and at some point we recognize that the path we're on, the direction we're taking, needs to change. And sometimes it's when the pain reaches a level that we start actually paying attention to it and realize, hey, we need to do something about this. It's not getting any better, and in fact, it's getting a lot worse. So 6-part series, and just briefly, just to hit the topics that we'll be covering over the next several weeks. Today, we're going to be talking about the actual cost and maybe underlying or hidden costs, so real cost associated with the pain. Then we're going to talk about stress. This is the stress and impact of your workers and your workforce, followed by what about your customers, the dissatisfaction. There's a pain associated with that as well. Then something we're calling the tyranny of the urgent. That's you're so busy doing things, the fire of the day, that you fail to look at things that are really important for your company to do, and that's a real cost. Your culture, unhealthy culture, which we talk about all the time, Brett, and then finally safety and quality, which is, of course, is a concern to all of us as well. But today we're going to talk about the first part of that, which is the cost, the real underlying cost. And this is probably the most common thing that gets people thinking about this idea, Brett, the cost of not making changes. And a lot of our clients, to their credit, they recognize this, and that oftentimes ends up in an opportunity for us to engage them and talk about how we can help them.
No, that's correct. Yes, like you said, Tim, I think that if somebody's already a Skillwork client, there's a good chance that they've already taken the time to recognize the cost impact of their organization. The companies or the leaders that are out there that are sitting there thinking about, well, I'm not sure what those costs are, that's probably an indication that you probably need to listen in and see if maybe some of what we're saying will resonate. And so, I think specifically, Tim, we've got a couple clients right now and a couple new ones that we're talking to, and their pain point, as we've indicated, the cost of doing nothing is now not acceptable.
Right.
And in their case, and it could be across multiple industries, as we know, as we do multiple industries, but the ones that I'm thinking of today are some companies that are in the manufacturing sector. And so, in their case, a lot of times the cost impact is when they can no longer meet the requirements of their customer. They don't have the workforce that they need to fill the orders. They're having to actually shut lines down, as we say in the plants, to just because they can't find the people. Now, our model, Tim, as you know very well, is really initially designed around the skilled trade specific, the technicians, the maintenance guys, and that's really where we build our business model off of, and initially that is, to this day, that's where we really provide the most skilled help. But we are now seeing some situations where I don't know if it's a result of just the growth in manufacturing, or if it's COVID related, or what exactly it is. I think we're still trying to understand that as well.
Right.
But where companies are actually looking for us to take some of the success of our model in the skilled trade space and apply it to other areas of shortages that they have in their facilities, whether it be quality assurance, whether it be supervision, and potentially even some frontline production.
Right, so that's even their cost, and their pain associated with their cost is causing us to look a little bit into our model and what we do to try to help them alleviate that. So obviously, for those of you watching this now, you're running a business, you're a leader, you're interested in solving this. Real actual cost, hard costs, are the things that get your attention, a lot of attention. So we're going to hit on that first, some of the actual cost and some of the things that may be driving that you may not recognize, because I think business leaders, the first step towards rectifying a solution like this is just, do you really know what it's costing you? And so there's some things associated with real cost we wanted to highlight, as well as maybe some hidden costs. So starting out with the actual cost, again, we don't have to define this, but just for the sake of keeping everybody on the same page, these are actual real cost, your bottom line, that you need to get under control to be able to help you achieve your goals and some of the objectives. So let's hit on some of those things that drive bottom line negative impacts.
Yeah, well, the first one would be not in any particular order of magnitude of cost, but missing deadlines. And so whether you're a project-based business, which would be more likely maybe construction or construction services, the missing deadlines can have impact both to a lot of times they even build things into the contracts, right, that if you're late by a certain amount. The other, missed deadline or missed deliveries. And so, back to the manufacturing, it would be more likely to be you're not filling orders. And I spent, a lot of years of my career in that manufacturing space, running a company. And, we had customers that would fine us if we failed to deliver.
Fine, not find.
They might find us too.
Yeah.
And so,
they would find you and then fine you.
That's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, missing deadlines, definitely has a cost impact, both in actual cost and probably reputation.
Yeah. So that's obviously one. Many of us maybe have recognized that one. The second one I'll talk about is when you don't have the appropriate level of staff or enough staff, and you start stressing your staff and pushing them hard, you get more rework, you get more defects, you end up with the cost associated with redoing orders, redoing projects, pulling work out if you're in the construction industry, ripping stuff out and redoing it, and we all know that it costs a lot more to do it a second time because you have to pull everything back out, and usually it's not a greenfield project. You got to pull everything out and get everything back. So that's one that you don't have enough people. You start pushing your staff, you end up with the defects going up, and there's a direct correlation to the bottom line.
No, absolutely. Well, in the construction, the old saying is, measure twice and cut once. But when you don't have the people, and like you said, that cost of rework is significant.
Big deal, yeah.
And so, the third one that we wanted to touch on is that, in this whole same concept of being understaffed, whether it's in your maintenance group, whether it's in your project managers, whether it's in your skilled labor, wherever it is in your sector, safety related mishaps because of burnout, overworked, understaffed is a really significant issue, and it's one that I think, if you're not careful, can really get hidden. But often we would say, burnout leads to a lack of focus, which leads to an increase in your mod rate. And anybody, obviously, that's running a business knows that your mod rate and your work comp numbers, it takes a year to turn a mod rate around. So, it's not something you just all of a sudden, it catches up with you and then you pay the price for a while. And so safety is critical when you're understaffed.
Yeah, not only the bottom line cost to your business, but to your employees and time away from work and all that. So huge ramifications. And your reputation, construction, manufacturing, your reputation of a safe work environment is a huge thing. And there's a cost associated with that. I would say the cost also, the next one is when you have a lot of turnover, when you're stressing your staff, you have a lot of turnover. That means you're constantly looking to bring on new employees. That means you have to train, you have to onboard, you have to get them up to speed. There's a cost associated with that. Somewhere on the order of, $8,000 to $10,000 per employee is what statistics bear out. So every time you turn an employee over due to whatever reason, and you're bringing a new employee on, it's costing you $8,000 to $10,000. So those costs add up very quickly, and we see companies that almost absorb this as just something they assume that they have to live with. And we would say, maybe not. Maybe there's another approach. So cost to hire, train, and integrate is the next one. What do you have next, Brett?
Well, we kind of talked about it when we were talking about this, a little bit in the beginning. We talked about a couple specific companies, obviously without naming names, that were were coming to us because their pain point was so high now on the lack of production that they could get out because of the lack of quality staff that they could find. And so this next point is kind of specific to that. If not being able, two things that will cost you a lot of money fast in a production world is either not having the volume, or even worse, having the volume and not having the ability to get it made. But manufacturing plants are designed to run. They're not designed to be idle. You can't cover the overhead cost. You can't cover the other things that are just built into to a manufacturing facility. So not having the adequate staff to run your plant at full capacity is a significant cost impact.
Yeah, so all these things, you can kind of get where we're going. They all add up little by little, sometimes big chunks. So I think the next one is maybe it could have gone into hidden costs, but it's pretty easy to track if you look at it. And this is the fact that you're paying more. Our partners, our clients out there are tending to pay more wages for less talented or less experienced, less capable workers. So you have a higher cost for less productivity. So those are two, directions that are going in the opposite way that you don't want. So if you're going to pay a premium, which by the way, we highly support paying your skilled workers the wage that they deserve. But oftentimes companies are bringing in less talented, less capable, less experienced, and they're paying them more. So you can equate that to less staff, meaning you have to grind, you have more turnover, you're bringing people in, it's costing you more, and you get less capable employees out of that. So we've seen that pretty often as well.
Yeah, I mean, just to ride on that a little bit before we jump to the next one is specific back to a couple of these companies that we were talking to earlier. That's really where they were. They were debating whether to get in a bidding war to try to hire mediocre talent across town, or figure out a way. But that's when you get to a point, you can start making kind of poor decisions that start to cost you there. So then the seventh one, that it's similar to the safety one that I talked about a minute ago. Safety inside of your facility will drive your work comp cost up. Was what we were talking about. Obviously, it does also hurt your reputation, and then people don't want to come and work there, and then clearly just the recognition of the safety of people. But in addition to that is also healthcare cost. And so employees who are burnt out and in a facility or in a job site that has a high stress level, the studies are pretty clear what stress does to the body. Specifically, Stanford University Graduate School of Business reported that burnout cost in the U.S. Cost companies $190 billion per year in healthcare expenses.
That's with a B.
With a B. And it also indicated that there's on average 120,000 deaths per year as a direct result. Now, obviously, not all that stress is getting created, just in the workplace, but if you're creating a stressful work environment because you're not resolving your talent shortages,
right,
then you become part of that. And I think, we'll talk about it a little bit more either in this podcast or another one, the additional impact of that stress then going home and other things. I mean, it almost has, not just culture in your company, but almost, society impact.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we're going to talk about that exclusively in another podcast just because it is such a big factor. And I would say associated with that medical cost, too, is when, you're pushing your employees, they're working more hours, more overtime, they probably have less healthy lifestyles. They're not getting to, working out. They're probably not eating healthy. That all adds up to, poor health and medical costs going up. So it's a real cost. I would just say associated with this healthcare topic as well, another survey, just to pull some numbers in, a Gallup report shows that employees who experience burnout, these are, high stress, high tempo, guys are working a lot of overtime, So places that experience burnout are very often or always, they fall in one of those two categories, very often or always. These were striking to me. 63% more likely to take a sick day, okay? Half as likely to discuss how to approach performance goals with their manager, so they're reluctant to do that. 23% more likely to visit the emergency room, and 2.5 times as likely to be actively seeking a different job. So 2.5 times more likely. I'm looking for a way to get out of here. So they're looking at getting out the door. And then finally, 13% less confident in their performance. People don't feel good about what they're doing, about their jobs. All of these things, will drive the bottom line. And oftentimes, Brett, we hear that our solution, we come in and they look at it just on a dollar per hour basis, and they're like, "Oh, that cost, that's a premium cost that we can't do that." Right. And when you start looking at these, a savvy business leader can say, "Wow, that's that tipping point. It's costing us a lot more to do nothing than it is to implement this." So those are real costs, but we have some what we call hidden costs as well, underlying costs, and these are maybe not quite so obvious. Maybe they are to you, but sometimes they're not so obvious, but they can be even more devastating. So the biggest one, Brett, is one that we talk a lot about, and you've experienced yourself.
Yeah, probably the biggest one is just lost opportunity cost, and it's often said, both as an individual but specifically as a company, that if you're not growing, you're dying or you're going backwards, and so the inability to grow becomes a very negative on your culture. It becomes very stressful and very frustrated, and for individuals and company leaders. So.
Yeah, I mean that opportunity cost is so difficult to quantify because it's something you weren't able to do. It's like a false positive. It's hard to prove that. So opportunity cost is a huge one, but we talk to a lot of companies that just say they can't even bid on that work. They normally would. If they can't, they don't have the people to do it. So I'd say the next one that's an underlying cost, it's related to this stress concept and health of your employees, is really just the overall loss of morale and drive. We find in companies that are overwhelmed with staffing issues, and you experienced in one of the companies you were mentioning that you just visited with a week or so ago, this attitude. I think the comment from one of our client managers was, what was it? They had no hope.
Yeah, he said they were literally that they were hopeless.
They were hopeless.
They saw no solution to solve the problem. They were convinced there was no way for them to get the talent to get out of this, in essence, black hole that they found themselves in.
Right. So any one of you out there now, if you've ever been a place in your life when you felt hopeless or defeated, how productive were you during that season? Probably not very. And so there's definitely a hidden cost to that, just that idea that, man, nothing's getting better. So it really hidden, but it's definitely a real factor. So
yeah. Well, and the overall impact of that, type of thing is the culture of your company. A lot of companies, will, this can be found in mission statements and values, and everybody has it somewhere in there that says, their most important asset is their people.
Right.
Well, if you're not taking the time to really at least sit down and think about it, hopefully you sit down and you look at it and you go, hey, we're doing really well in all these areas, but if you're not, and you're making a statement to your people that they're the number one asset, but yet this is what's happening in your culture. I mean, it's a very it takes years. Doesn't take very long to degrade or tear down a culture. It takes a long time to build it back up.
Absolutely. And most of us that have been around a while have experienced this. It's not fun. I've seen companies where people leave and they're making great money, getting good bonuses, all of that sort of stuff, but the culture has degraded and they're looking somewhere else. They'll even take a pay cut to go there. So it's a real, although hidden cost. I'd say the next one is hard to quantify the loss of your experienced workers when they go out the door. So there's already a natural aging of the workforce of baby boomers that's causing a loss of experience. But some of these other things, when you're pushing your workforce to untenable levels, there is as we said, a transition of your employees out of there, and oftentimes your most experienced employees that you can least afford to lose are walking out the door. So hard to quantify what that is, the cost of experience, but I guarantee you know it and you feel it when you're having to replace that guy or that gal that just knows where everything is, knows how to get things done, and when they're gone, there's a real cost when that walks out the door.
Oh yeah, no, we have another client, a specific example of that. Now, for full disclosure, the gentleman was not the greatest in their culture, they tell me. I didn't know him, but he had been there for 20 years, was their lead mechanic. He left, somewhat asked to leave, but and they needed to do it, to get their culture correct. But in the next 30 days after he was gone, their runtime efficiencies dropped 20% in the plant, which just said that they were they needed him so bad because of his experience. Over time, they needed to make the change, but losing talent, hopefully talent with a better attitude.
Yeah.
But there's an example of 20% efficiency in a facility because of one or two people is not out of the question, and it's significant. So losing experience is a big deal.
No doubt, and we've seen that before, but it's hard to kind of put a number on it. In that case, they actually were able to do that. Last one.
Yeah, I think I got the last one here. So the kind of similar to we talk about culture, which is really more of an internal thing that you have to really keep as a business leader, you got to really be in tune with your culture and have a real honest perspective of where it's at. But on the other side is your business reputation, which is more of an outward appearance, and so not recognizing a lot of these things that we've talked about today. Eventually, that's going to get noticed, whether that's a reputation by clients, potential clients,
right,
or current clients, or whether it's potential future talent who hears about your reputation as a company and they have no interest in coming to work there. Mm-hmm. You clearly do not want to get to that point with your business.
Yeah, and we see that a lot, and it's reputation matters, and depending on the size of your town, and the town we live in is a fairly decent sized city, but it's got a small town feel, and everybody seems to know the reputation of businesses in our town, so it carries forward. So, I think, Brett, you said a lot of times you can't save your way to growth. Well, it's also true that you can't ignore these staffing issues for long and expect to continue to grow or to remain healthy. It's crucial that you look at it. So just kind of wrap up, and we'll synthesize some of the things we talked about. It's important to track and understand and recognize these costs, both the real or quantitative, and then the hidden or qualitative cost of being understaffed. Both of them have tons of significant impact, and it takes time to turn these things around.
No, it does. It does. It takes a lot of time, and I think it takes a recognition. I think we may have said it in this podcast. I'm sure we said it before. The fact that you don't recognize the issue doesn't make the issue go away, and so there's a pretty good chance that the other people in your organization, they have recognized it. And as leaders, we can get so busy sometimes, that we can be guilty of not seeing it maybe as soon as we should. But I think it's key, especially in today's, it's a very known fact that a lack of talent, CEOs have been quoted as saying the number one challenge of them meeting their goals is finding the talent they need to meet those goals. And so whether it's C-suite or whether it's production line or somewhere in the middle of skilled trades, the reality of these shortages is just a reality, and you have to have a plan as to how you're going to attract and or partner or address it.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're doing a book study here at our place right now about integrity, and Dr. Henry Cloud talks about a big part of integrity is the dealing with how do you deal with the reality of the challenges.
Yep.
Dealing with reality is what we get paid to do as leaders of our company, and don't underestimate the hidden cost of those staffing issues that are hard, that are and not tangible. A good way to find out how you're doing is just ask your people. Poll your people, communicate, find out how they're doing, how, do they think that there's enough staff currently to get the job done and balance, their input with realities. But it's really important to find that out. At the end of the day, reach out and partner with a company like Skillwork. At least reach out and talk to us and see if there's some suggestions we can give to you. In some cases, it's not a great fit. In other cases, it's a perfect fit, either for a season or for the longer term. But this is what we focus on 24/7 every day. It's our sweet spot. We understand it, and we'd love to engage you and talk to you about this. So as we finish this episode of the Skillwork Forum, again, we just want to recognize the hard work that those of you that we support out there are doing. We appreciate it very much. We appreciate being partners with you. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us on the Skillwork Forum. Until next time, take care.